Earlier in the week, you and I were sitting around this desk talking about a story we published at Bloomberg. We had spoken to a U.S. official who told us that post-Jake Sullivan's trip around the region, it seems as though some of the U.S. concerns or reservations about a full-scale attack in Rafah had been diluted. Now we hear that Israel are indeed prepping for that ground offensive. What is the latest?
So I think that's right. They are prepping for this ground offensive. Israel first mentioned going to Rafah, I think it was back in January, and there was constant talk of it after that. They said from the beginning that they would let civilians in the city out first, and there were, give or take, 1.4 million of them there, more than half of Rafah, more than half of Gaza's overall population. The U.S. never said that it wouldn't accept any assault whatsoever on Rafah. It said it would only accept it if the civilians were allowed out first. There was huge skepticism, and to be honest, there still is huge skepticism that all of them can be got out safely. Israel is now saying 1 million of them are out. The UN, which last spoke about this about a week ago, said something like 850,000 civilians were out. So a lot of them have left already, but you're probably still talking about 200, 300, 400,000 civilians in the city, which makes any impending assault potentially very deadly if they don't get out. And then you have the whole other question of the conditions that those people who have left Rafah are living in.
Well, we had Sam Dawid, our Saudi correspondent, also talking about the fact that tents are going for as much as $1,000. So it's not just people getting out of Rafah, but the conditions at which they've been forced to leave. But of course, the backdrop to all of this is these potential truce deal talks that have been going on. They were put on pause for a couple of weeks, and certainly that was the signaling from the Qatari PM when we spoke to him in the Qatar Economic Forum. But it seems as though something has happened yesterday, and that was the release of the footage of these female Israeli soldiers being abducted by Hamas. The families of those hostages released those videos. Very shocking, and it seems to have moved public sentiment once more in Israel, pushing the government to once more re-enter into those discussions. So is there hope now that maybe something can come out of it in this second attempt?
I think there is. The problem with these talks is that since the one and only truce ended on the 1st of December, that was a week-long truce where roughly half the 250 hostages taken on October the 7th were released. There've been constant, constant talk of a deal being close, and we've never got there. In the last sort of 2-3 weeks, with the Israeli forces trying to move civilians out of Rafah and an assault looking likely, the talks seemed all but dead. And as you mentioned, the Qatari Prime Minister, who's one of the key mediators between Israel and Hamas, all but said that they were going nowhere and they were totally stalled. It does seem like they're potentially now back on again, and there are reports and speculation that the head of Mossad and the head of the CIA are going to meet up soon, possibly with Qatari and Egyptian mediators. But I think we still need to point out that the big problem, or I think perhaps the biggest problem, and has been for a long time between Hamas and Israel, is that Israel says any truce must be just that, temporary, and that the war must continue afterwards until Hamas is defeated and or it surrenders. Hamas wants to make any truce effectively permanent, and that's something Israel says it won't accept. There's still a lot of daylight
between the two sides, but at least Israel are showing signs that they want to get back to the discussions again.